Let's get into this, right? So I kind of gave the initial thoughts. Let's talk about some of the players, though, because I always say, it's a line I took from combat sports back in the day, but like, they say like styles make fights. Like, I've always thought in Counter-Strike, that's like the perfect way to describe a single matchup, because you can have matchups where, you know, one team is literally like 28th in the world rankings, the other team's number 5, but maybe the 28th team has an awesome map pool and a really great style, and suddenly it's an even matchup. Or you could do the example I gave before, which is you have a bunch of legendary players like Astralis, and then you have a bunch of players who wish they sort of were in the position of Astralis, and so maybe that psychologically evens it up. So if we talk about some of the names, right, obviously not many people have watched the new AWPer for Astralis Locky play, right? But as Protalis just said there, Alan, and it is a point that as much as the results for Astralis minus Cologne haven't really been that impressive, there is a part of me that, while on the one hand, I'll obviously give you a big leeway if you have stand-ins and you can't necessarily go and replace someone like Device with someone as good. But at the same time, if you are someone like Glaive, I can't say like I wipe this whole period out. Like, you have still got people in your lineup like Dupree. By the way, he was doing some amazing shit in Cologne. Obviously, he's still a very good player. Magisk, I know he's not the Magisk we think of from years ago, but he's still supposed to be potentially a top level player. You've still got good pieces in the team. Like, what do you actually think of the player strength, Alan, of Astralis at the moment? Like, where do you see, like, what players would need to perform for them to be good? Where do you see the strengths right now?
I mean, starting with Lucky, obviously, if we don't want to so much, but you do have to contrast him with Device at the end of the day with the players around him. He's obviously, the jump up from the level he was playing before is truly enormous. And from watching how they've been playing so far with Lucky, it certainly looks like he has a few options. He can get aggressive in some places, but it's nothing close to what it was with Device, where Device had total free reign. He could do what he wanted, call around himself. So at the moment, I'm not going to use the term support AWPer, but, I don't think Lucky's calling around himself as nearly as much as Device would have been back in the day. So at the moment, that they're not getting an enormous amount of value out of that position compared to, the best AWPers in the world, all over the place, the real thorn in the side of their opponents. So on the Lucky side of the equation, I think he's looked fine, probably better than I would have expected, to be honest, considering where he came from before. So I think Lucky's okay, but in terms of the players who have to frag out of this world, it's pretty much, I think Dupree has to be one of the best players in the tournament, really, for Astralis to perform. He's been a little bit up and down, but I think he's been reasonably consistent throughout all of Astralis' problems. And then I guess the other one would be Magisk or Magus or whatever, because I pretty sure towards the start of this year, he's having a really tough period. He was questioning what was wrong with his playstyle or his game. And he's a player that we know can play brilliantly. He plays brilliantly in the tough spots, anchor positions. And from watching Astralis, they've swapped a lot of spots on their CT side. So Magis has a lot of new spots to contend with, and he's definitely going to be a linchpin, whether he can perform in some of those tougher roles, particularly picking up some spots that Zipnix might have given up by moving out of the active lineup for the moment. So yeah, for me, Lucky's improvement is a big talking point, and I want to see Magis back at reasonably close to where we saw him at least during times of last year.
What do you think, Portalis?
Yeah, I really agree with you on that front, especially. It looks like Dupree is sort of the linchpin for Astralis at the moment in terms of those performances. If we walk into this matchup and he's having a really quiet game, it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to overcome Heroic in this best of 3 series. And it is a good point that it is pretty unfair to be comparing Lucky to Device, who just went out of the team. But I mean, when Zipnix is dropping an interview just before this tournament starts, where he quite literally says, "I feel as though the Astralis era died with Device," you have something huge to prove when you walk into this team. You have the biggest shoes to fill possible, because Device was one of those pillars of Astralis that if everything went wrong in the round, you can sort of turn around. If Device is still up, maybe there's still an opportunity. You can work strategies around him specifically, whereas that's something I feel that might be missing for the Astralis squad at the moment, is something you can turn to and build those concrete strats around, because you're sort of just dependent on people like Dupree or Magisk having exemplary performances when they haven't really been having those on much of a consistent level at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, for a bunch of those names, like on the Lucky one, here's how I divide it up. And this might sound like I'm nitpicking, but I'm doing it very specifically so that I'm doing it based on the expectations for who the entity is. So here's how it goes, right? If I'm addressing Astralis, then Lucky has to literally already be a tier 1 AWPer today, and he has to be good. Otherwise, I have to criticize Astralis, because what the fuck is he doing in the team? This is a real tournament. Yes, so probably supposed to be one of the main tournaments of the year, and the EPT, etc. Like, at the end of the day, they should field a top player. They are a top organization. But if I view it from Lockie's perspective, I give him a massive pass. Like, I don't even count this whole tournament, quite frankly. Like, as I said, of all the roles to do, I know to a fan they think like the ops just point and click. It's like, yeah, no, but it's point and click against like the best rifle players in the world who already know how to counter, like everyone except like Simple and Ziwu. Like, that's an incredibly difficult task. And you're also, let's be real, you're not just getting thrown into a plug and play team. You're getting thrown into fucking Astralis, which, as far as we can tell, are themselves, by virtue of bringing Lockie on board, completely revamping the whole team. Like, quite frankly, when they brought Lockie in now, this even suggests to me that while some of the leaks that we've heard about may well just be absolute nonsense, just fabricated or guesswork, you know, I actually suspect that bringing in Lockie this like quickly and throwing him in the lineup immediately, that makes it sound like dupreeh also may well actually be on the way out of the lineup, because to me, dupreeh was the obvious person who absolutely can just be your AWPer temporarily if you want him for like a month or something. Like, he's actually a player, bizarrely. I know in their team, like, obviously they've had a bunch of players over the years who could do it, and they had Device for so many years they didn't need him. But if you've seen the tournaments where Device went out years ago and he was the primary AWP, dude, he was absolutely fine. He was immediately like a tier 1 player. In fact, whereas people like fucking Nico and Shocks get drawn to the siren call of that fucking AWP and try to be primary AWPers, dupreeh actually does look like a player who could probably just do it. I don't think he would be like, you know, top 5 in the world, but he would be better than like Lockie probably would right now. So to me, that makes me wonder if they also sort of know there are still more dominoes to fall. So why waste your time trying to win a random Pro League game? Why not just get ahead of things? Basically, like, get ahead of bedding in Lockie, give him all his chances now, way before it matters. Start to figure out which of the other players are leaving, and then for the other two, for mainly just for Magisk, I'll say. The problem I have with the Magisk angle is, in the back of my head, yeah, there's a world where he could just teleport back to like 2018 and be unbelievable. The problem is he hasn't really been that player for years at this point in time. And I even do have my worries as well, actually, that bearing in mind, he was essentially the IGL of them winning like both those Pro Leagues last year. How many times have we seen a very skilled individual player become an IGL, and then when they stop being the IGL, they just never quite become the same individual player again? Like, something changes in their mind about how they view the game, and it's almost like, bizarrely, they can't tunnel vision and just be a superstar player anymore. They're just like, they're too hooked into the idea of seeing the bigger picture, as it were. So I certainly think Astralis, like, they know it themselves. They just have no identity at the moment. They've got to try to figure it out, and unfortunately this isn't a LAN, so you're not going to get away with just like, let's look to Glaive and then hope the other team doesn't have Glaive. Like, that ain't going to play out online. We all know everyone's got their favourite brand of Coca-Cola or whatever the fucking meme is that all those guys do. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.